Hi folks, and welcome to the second video for week 4 of MU111. We're talking about form, and specifically in this video we're talking about binary. It's a particular form, okay? There's two different sorts of binary we're especially going to be focusing on, and this links as well into the next video, which is going to be on ternary as well. There's important things, so you need to watch this video before watching ternary, okay? So building on what we just talked about in terms of theme and motif, we're now going to be thinking at slightly larger structures, okay? So in the context of musical form, binary is a type of form that has two main parts, okay? The clue's in the name, binary, just like you would say with sort of computer coding or anything like that, it's binary, two main parts, okay? We often call the two bits of binary reprises, because each of those is often repeated, not always, but in lots of binary form pieces, those two parts are repeated, okay? There are two main types of binary form, rounded and simple. We're going to talk through both, okay? So both of those sorts are associated with dance music as well. And that kind of association has sort of gone now when we think about binary forms, but they often were. They're often much shorter pieces, okay? So for that reason, you often find binary form within a much larger thing. Okay, we're just going to be looking at examples of one small pieces, one-offs, which count as examples of binaries, okay? So your basic binary structure is to have these two sections, these reprises, that are repeated, okay? It looks very simple, just like that, if we were going to have a visual representation. They repeated mostly just so that the listener might feel familiar with it, okay? When it gets to trying to spot what sort of binary we're talking about, though, theme matters, okay? That's being able to differentiate multiple themes, the differences between themes. So, for example, simple binary, the first one we're going to look at. What's crucial with simple binary is that there is no substantial return of opening material. That word return is important, okay? So I'm going to show up two visual examples of what simple binary might look like, okay? So the first one is where it continues with the same sort of ideas from the first section, okay? But we might label it a dash. So it's not a repeat of the first section, it perhaps is a slight variation, but it uses the same material, okay? So it's a little variation, okay? We wouldn't call this a return, though, because it never leaves the theme A material. Yeah, it doesn't go away and then come back, it just repeats it immediately, perhaps in a slightly different version, but doesn't go anywhere with it, okay? The second option for simple binary, which is perhaps easier to spot as well, is that the second reprise, the second half, has new material, and we might call that theme B, and doesn't reprise any of the previous A material, okay? So those are our two types of simple binary, okay? So the example we've got here, I'm just going to show up in the score in a second, we're going to talk through an example by Francis Johnson, African-American composer in the 19th century. He wrote some short piano works, and there's lots of transcriptions for his works for brass and band and things like that. This is a piece called Victoria Gallop. And if we look at the score, straight away we can see, okay, very clear sectional markings. Okay, this is an extract, there's further sections, but we might understand this as a miniature simple binary form. So we essentially see A material in bars 1 to 8, and then really we see B, and that's about as simple as it gets, okay, as an example of simple binary. Okay, let's listen to that now. Okay, so it's one of the simplest forms we can get, really. Note that the first bit is not repeated, the second bit is, okay? It's not necessarily a set pattern, but we can say that this is in simple binary form, okay? That's obviously the clues in the name, the simple binary, but rounded binary is more complicated, okay? This is building from forms. We start with simple binary, then to slightly more complicated binary. In rounded binary, the A material returns in the tonic somewhere in the middle of the second section. Okay? It's not necessarily the case that all of the A material needs to be restated, only the sort of first bit, though often it is restated in total, but it doesn't have to be. Okay? While that material might be exactly the same in terms of theme, it could be a little bit different, so we might still have variations as well. Okay? Crucially, in between the two, we have B material, so a contrasting theme, which is not related, which is different. Okay? So we do have the sense of return with rounded binary, since we have A, then something else, and then A comes back. Okay? Crucially, though, repeat marks and other structure show us that it's two sections. It's still a binary. Okay? You might think there are three sections here because clearly there's three different chunks to it. A, B, A. But we're going to talk in the next video about ternary versus rounded binary. Okay? There are differences, and it's crucial that we be able to spot those. So for our example of rounded binary, we're going to look at Ignatius Sancho, an African-British composer from the 18th century. This is his Minuet number 9, 1779. And if we look, so it's from an original printed score, so the typefaces takes a little getting used to. If we look at the repeat marks, though, we obviously see that towards in the middle system. We see B material, and then in the final system, from the fourth bar, we then see the return of the A material. Okay, it doesn't return in total, and it's more a sort of hint at it as well. We have further variations, but that's a very good example of rounded binary in this piece. Okay, A material in tonic, then B material slightly different. It doesn't have to be in a different key, but it often might be, and then the return of A material in tonic as well. Okay. I'm going to finish by saying that we might be able to talk about binary different sections in terms of open and closed harmony. This is going back to cadences, and one of your tasks for this week's exercises is to be labelling and spotting cadences. So different bits of binary can end with different cadences. We talk about them being open or closed. Remember that a half cadence, that is one that ends on the dominant, suggests openness. Because again, in terms of tonality and trajectory, we've moved away from tonic, and we then need to resolve. A perfect authentic cadence suggests closed form, that we've reached the ultimate goal. Okay, those are our two opposites. Interesting to note, this comes up in more longer pieces, but an imperfect authentic cadence, remember that finishes on the tonic but not with scale degree 1, that can also suggest openness as well. Okay, even though the harmony has closed with the tonic, the melody hasn't, because it hasn't reached scale degree 1. So we might think of harmonic closure and melodic closure. A PAC is both, an IAC is 1. So it's still a little bit open, okay? If the first half of binary is open, it would suggest a brief modulation, okay? Usually with a half cadence to the dominant, all right? That, in a nutshell, is binary form. You, of course, have exercises to be going on with this week, some of which are definitely binary. You need to be labelling the kind of sections, perhaps the themes, and also the cadences, okay? As always, if you have any questions with that, please just drop me an email, and I'll see you in the next video. Excuse me.